Mr. Speaker, I move that this bill be now read a second time. In 2020, Australians have been tested like never before. Flood, fires, drought, and a global pandemic. So many Australians, through no fault of their own, are doing it tough. Lives have been lost. Businesses have closed. Jobs have gone. Our cherished way of life has been put on hold. Our local heroes, the healthcare workers on the front line, just as the volunteer firefighters did over summer, are showing us the way. Their courage, commitment and compassion show the very best of Australia. Tonight, a grateful nation gives thanks. These qualities are the invisible strength of Australia. We are a resilient people, a proud nation, and we will get through this together. The Great Depression and 2 world wars did not bring Australia to its knees, and neither will COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has resulted in the most severe global economic crisis since the Great Depression. Across the world, the equivalent of 600 million jobs have been lost. The global economy is expected to contract by 4.5% this year, compared to just 0.1% during the GFC. Australia has not been immune. Our economy has been hit, and hit hard. In the space of just 1 month, more than 1 million Australians have lost their job or saw their working hours reduced to 0. In my home state of Victoria, millions have been in lockdown. In response, the Morrison government has committed unprecedented support, saving lives, cushioning the blow, and helping Australians remain in work. Our measures were temporary, were targeted, and were proportionate. JobKeeper is a $101 billion economic lifeline that is today supporting more than 3.5 million Australians. The cash flow boost has already provided $28 billion, helping around 800,000 small and medium-sized businesses stay afloat. JobSeeker doubled the safety net, and 2 $750 payments went to millions of pensioners, carers and others on income support. Together, our actions saved 700,000 jobs. We could do this because we entered this crisis from a position of economic strength. We brought the budget back to balance for the first time in 11 years, and we maintained our AAA credit rating. This gave us the fiscal firepower to respond when we needed it most. Mr. Speaker, our economic response has come at a significant cost. COVID-19 will see our deficit reach $213.7 billion this year, falling to $66.9 billion by 2023-24. Net debt will increase to $703 billion, or 36% of GDP this year, and peak at $966 billion, or 44% of GDP in June 2024. This is a heavy burden, but a necessary one to responsibly deal with the greatest challenge of our time. By comparison, Australia's net debt as a share of the economy will peak at half of that in the United Kingdom, around a third of that in the United States, and around a quarter of that in Japan today. Australia's economy contracted by 7% in the June quarter. By comparison, there were falls of around 12% in New Zealand, 14% in France, and around 20% in the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, the Australian economy is now fighting back. More than half of those who lost their job are now back at work. There remains a monumental task ahead. But there is hope, and Australia is up to the task. Tonight, we embark as a nation on the next phase of the journey, a journey to rebuild our economy and secure Australia's future. Our plan will grow the economy. Our plan will create jobs. Our plan will guarantee the essential services that Australians rely on. And we will do this without increasing taxes. Our plan is guided by our values. Our circumstances may have changed, but our values endure. Providing a helping hand to those who need it. Personal responsibility. Reward for effort. The power of aspiration. We owe it to the next generation to ensure a strong economy so that their lives are filled with the same opportunities and possibilities that we have enjoyed. Tonight, I lay out the Morrison government's economic recovery plan to steer Australia through this crisis and build a better future. Mr. Speaker, there is no economic recovery without a jobs recovery. There is no budget recovery without a jobs recovery. And this budget is all about jobs. Starting tonight, there will be a new JobMaker hiring credit to encourage businesses to hire young Australians. The JobMaker hiring credit will be payable for up to 12 months and immediately available to employers who hire those on JobSeeker aged 16 to 35. It will be paid at the rate of $200 a week for those aged under 30 and $100 a week for those aged 30 to 35. New hires must work for at least 20 hours a week. All businesses other than the major banks will be eligible, and Treasury estimates that this will support around 450,000 jobs for young people. Mr. Speaker, having a job means more than having an income. It means economic security. It means independence. It means opportunity. And we can't let this COVID recession take that away. Mr. Speaker, this budget is making a record investment in upskilling and reskilling Australians. We have established the $1 billion Job Trainer Fund to create up to 340,000 free or low-cost training places for school leavers and job seekers. We have also committed $2.8 billion to protect 180,000 apprenticeships and trainees. And tonight we go further. We commit an additional $1.2 billion to create 100,000 new apprenticeships, with a 50% wage subsidy for businesses who employ them. In this budget, to help Australians get a job, we are funding 50,000 new higher education, short courses in agriculture, health, IT, science and teaching. 12,000 new Commonwealth supported places for higher education in 2021. 2,000 Indigenous students through the Clontarf Foundation to complete Year 12 and pursue further education or find employment. And we are investing in regions across Australia to connect job seekers to local employment opportunities, including in Darwin, Townsville and Cairns in our north, through to Gippsland, Hobart and Adelaide in the south, from Perth in the west and the Hunter in the east. And tonight, we're also making important changes to our tax system to further encourage businesses and employees to retrain. In a modern economy, workers and businesses need to adapt, and so should our tax system. Mr. Speaker, in last year's budget, we promised the Australian people tax relief so that they could keep more of what they earn. We delivered, putting more money into the pockets of hard-working Australians, strengthened our economy and our ability to respond to this economic crisis. Tonight, we go further again. More than 11 million taxpayers will get a tax cut backdated to the 1st of July this year. Yeah. Australians will have more of their own money to spend on what matters to them, generating billions of dollars of economic activity and 50,000 new jobs. It will help local businesses to keep their doors open and hire more staff. Lower and middle income earners will this year receive tax relief of up to $2,745 for singles and up to $5,490 for dual income families compared with 2017-18. We will achieve this by bringing forward stage 2 of our legislated tax cuts by 2 years, lifting the 19% threshold from $37,000 to $45,000 and lifting the 32.5% threshold from $90,000 to $120,000. We will also retain the low and middle income tax offset for an additional year. As a proportion of tax payable compared to 2017-18, the greatest benefits will flow to those on lower incomes, with those earning $40,000 paying 20% less tax, and those on $80,000 paying around 11% less tax this year. Under our changes, more than 7 million Australians receive tax relief of $2,000 or more this year. These expanded tax cuts are part of a major structural reform to our tax system of no more than 30 cents on the dollar in 24-25. Under the coalition, taxes will always be lower. Mr. Speaker, 8 out of every 10 jobs in Australia are in the private sector. It is the engine of the Australian economy, and it needs a kickstart. Building on the successful expansion of the instant asset write-off during the COVID crisis, tonight we go further, announcing the largest set of investments any Australian government has ever provided, the largest set of investment incentives any Australian government has ever provided. From tonight, over 99% of businesses will be able to write off the full value of any eligible asset they purchase for their business. This will be available for small, medium and large businesses with a turnover of up to $5 billion until June 2022. It's a game changer, and it will unlock investment. It will dramatically expand the productive capacity of the nation and create tens of thousands of jobs. A trucking company will be able to upgrade its fleet. A farmer will be able to purchase a new harvester. And a food manufacturing business will be able to expand its production line. This boost will help the order books of the nation, Small businesses will buy, sell, deliver, install and maintain these assets. Every sector of our economy, every corner of our country will benefit. And this is how Australians get back to work. Mr. Speaker, through no fault of their own, millions of small and medium-sized businesses have faced lockdowns and restrictions that have severely impacted their ability to trade. COVID-19 has turned fundamentally good businesses into loss-making businesses. Normally, businesses would have to return to profit before they could use these losses. But these are not normal times. In order to keep their workers, these businesses need our help to grow. They cannot wait for years for the tax system to catch up. They need our help now. So tonight, I'm announcing companies that have been doing it tough throughout the crisis will be able to use their losses earlier. Losses incurred to June 2022 can be offset against prior profits made in or after the 2018-19 financial year. The combination of the immediate expensing and loss carryback measures will create an additional 50,000 jobs across the country. And together with our reforms to insolvency and the provision of credit, we are giving Australian businesses their best chance to succeed and to keep more Australians in work. Mr. Speaker, Australian women made up the majority of those who lost their jobs during the crisis. As the health restrictions have eased, these jobs have started to come back, with 60% of the 458,000 jobs that have been created since May filled by women. But challenges remain. We are determined to see female workforce participation reach its pre-COVID record high. This budget includes our second Women's Economic Security Statement with $240 million in measures and programs to support new cadetships and apprenticeships for women in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, job creation and entrepreneurialism, and women's safety at work and at home. The 2020 Women's Economic Security Statement will create more opportunities and choices for women, not just for this recovery, but for generations ahead. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has reinforced the importance of Australia's sovereign manufacturing capability. Almost overnight, resourceful Australian businesses adapted. A reconfigured supply chain tripled mask production at a factory in Shepparton. Production lines for sleep apnea devices were converted to make ventilators in Western Sydney. Gin distilleries became manufacturers of hand sanitizer across Tasmania. And tonight, we build on these strengths with a plan to assure Australian manufacturing plays an even greater role in our economic recovery. Our $1.3 billion modern manufacturing plan will target 6 national manufacturing priorities: food and beverage manufacturing, resources technology and critical minerals processing, medical products, recycling and clean energy, defence industry and space industry. This plan is built on the JobMaker platform of enabling our manufacturing businesses to be globally competitive through cheaper and reliable energy, better skills and training, lower taxes, less red tape and more flexible workplaces. Mr. Speaker, research and development, the adoption of digital technology and affordable and reliable energy will be critical to Australia's future economic prosperity. In this budget, we are providing $2 billion in additional research and development incentives, removing the cap on refunds, lifting the rate and rewarding those businesses that invest the most. We're also providing $459 million in additional funding for the CSIRO, $1 billion for new research funding for our universities, backing our best and brightest minds whose ideas will help drive our recovery, and $1.9 billion in new funding as part of our energy plan to support low emissions and renewable technologies, helping to lower emissions and address climate change. We're also helping to unlock 5 key gas basins, starting with the Beetaloo Basin in the Northern Territory and the North Bowen and Galilee Basins in Queensland. More gas at lower prices will support more jobs in Australia's manufacturing sector. Mr. Speaker, rebuilding our economy includes building more roads, more rail and more bridges. In this budget, we will expand our 10-year infrastructure pipeline, which is already supporting 100,000 jobs across worksites today. Together, what we have announced since the start of this crisis, measures in this budget will see $14 billion in new and accelerated infrastructure projects support a further 40,000 jobs. This will boost productivity and deliver benefits to Australians. This budget will fund major projects across each state. The Singleton Bypass and Bolivia Hill upgrade in New South Wales. The upgrade of the Shepparton and Warrnambool rail lines in Victoria. The Coomera Connector in Queensland. The Wheatbelt secondary freight network in Western Australia. The Main South Road duplication in South Australia. The Tasman Bridge upgrade in Tasmania, the Carpentaria Highway upgrades in the Northern Territory and the Molonglo River Bridge in the ACT. These and many other projects we are funding will set Australia up for the future, because we know that building more infrastructure now means building and creating more jobs. So tonight, we're also announcing $2 billion investment in road safety upgrades to save Australian lives. Yeah. Funding for these shovel-ready projects will be provided on a use-it-or-lose-it basis. If a state drags its feet, another state will get the money. Yeah. We need works to start, not stall. We're also expanding the local roads and community infrastructure program, investing an additional $1 billion to support local council immediate upgrades of local roads, footpaths and street lighting. These investments in our local communities will support local jobs. Mr. Speaker, our regions have endured the most widespread natural disasters in decades. Tonight's budget includes a package of measures to create jobs and back regional Australia's economic recovery. $2 billion in concessional loans to help farmers overcome the devastating drought. $350 million to support regional tourism, attract domestic visitors back to the regions, and a further round of the Building Better Regions Fund. And $317 million for Australian exporters to continue to access global supply chains, building on the 80,000 tonnes of exports we have already helped get to market. Mr. Speaker, our regions cannot thrive without water. This government is building water infrastructure for the 21st century to increase our water security, build resilience, deliver jobs and grow our agricultural sector. We've already funded over 20 projects to supply billions of litres for productive use, with construction of the Emu Swamp Dam currently underway. In this budget, we have doubled our commitment to the Wyangala and Dungowan dams, with our investment totalling $567 million. Tonight, we go further. I announced $2 billion in new funding to build vital water infrastructure across the country as part of our national water grid, including dams, weirs and pipelines. Yeah. This will support regional communities and support regional jobs. Mr. Speaker, protecting our environment and this magnificent continent is our responsibility. This budget builds on the investments we made in last year's budget with an additional $1.8 billion in funding for the environment. Our investments reflect our commitments to help wildlife recover from the Black Summer bushfires and to protect and enhance our unique natural environment. We will undertake the biggest single investment in Australia's Commonwealth's national parks, injecting $233 million to upgrade facilities in Uluru, Kakadu, Christmas Island and Booderee National Park. In this budget, we'll also provide $67 million in further funding to protect our oceans by improving their health and restoring Australia's mangroves, tidal marshes and seagrasses. Mr. Speaker, by recycling more waste, we can also create more jobs. The Morrison government is banning the export of plastic, paper, tyres and glass waste. In the words of the Prime Minister, it's our waste and it's our responsibility. This budget will invest $250 million to modernise our recycling infrastructure, stop more than 600,000 tonnes of waste ending up in landfill, and in so doing help to create a further 10,000 jobs. Further investments to strengthen our resilience to the natural disasters will be announced in our response to the Royal Commission into national natural disaster arrangements. Mr. Speaker, tonight we will help thousands of Australians achieve their dream of home ownership. And in doing so, we will support thousands of jobs across the construction sector. An additional 10,000 first home buyers will be able to purchase a home sooner under our first home loan deposit scheme. This builds on the 20,000 first home buyers we are helping to purchase a home this year with a deposit as low as 5% under this scheme. And in this budget, we're also enabling an additional $1 billion of low-cost finance to support the construction of affordable housing. This takes the total concessional finance that has been made available to community housing providers to $3 billion. And it's in addition to the $4.6 billion a year that we provide in rental assistance. Tonight we're also investing $150 million in the Indigenous Home Ownership Program to construct new homes in regional areas, creating more jobs and helping hundreds of Indigenous families buy their own home. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 crisis has confirmed how vital it is to have a strong economy that can continue to guarantee the delivery of essential services. In this budget, there is record funding for hospitals, record funding for schools, record funding for aged care, record funding for childcare and record funding for disability services. We're providing an additional $3.9 billion for the NDIS, which is providing life-changing support to 400,000 Australians with a disability. Every Australian can be confident that the NDIS will always be fully funded under a coalition government. We have committed over $16 billion as part of the government's ongoing health response to the COVID-19 crisis, securing millions of masks, gowns, goggles, ventilators, and we have worked with the states to significantly increase the capacity of intensive care units right across the country. We have extended Medicare subsidised telehealth services, enabling more than 30 million consultations to occur since the crisis began. And we've secured access to more than 80 million doses of potential vaccines for COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, mental health and suicide prevention is a national priority. My heart goes out to all those Australians, young and old, for whom COVID-19 has caused such pain. My message tonight is that this House stands with you. You are not alone. Around 7 million Medicare subsidised mental health services have been delivered since March. And tonight, we are doubling the number of Medicare-funded psychological services through the Better Access Initiative from 10 to 20. We're providing more funding for Lifeline, for Headspace, for Beyond Blue and for Kids Helpline. We're providing support for more young Australians with a mental illness to help them participate in the workforce. And these initiatives will bring our commitment to mental health to $5.7 billion this year. And this is not the last word. In coming weeks, we will release the Productivity Commission's Mental Health Final Report and the interim report into suicide prevention that was commissioned by the Prime Minister. These reports will guide our future actions, and working together with the states and the territories, we will save lives. Mr. Speaker, the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme has provided critical medicines to Australians. We have delivered on our commitment to list all medicines recommended by the independent experts, with more than 2,000 new and amended listings since we came to government. Tonight, I'm announcing the listing of Lynparza to help women with ovarian cancer. Instead of costing more than $140,000 per course of treatment, patients will now have access to this medicine for $6.60 per script for concession card holders and around $41 per script for general patients. This is what it means to have a strong economy. This is what it means to look after one's fellow Australian. Mr. Speaker, senior Australians have faced enormous challenges during COVID-19, including isolation and separation from their children, their grandchildren and their friends. To support our aged pensioners, we provided $750 payments in April and July. And tonight, I announced that aged pensioners will receive an additional $250 payment from December and a further $250 payment from March next year. Aged care is one of the greatest challenges that we face in delivering essential services to Australians. During this crisis, an additional $1.6 billion has already been provided to support the needs of Australians in aged care. Next February, the government will receive the final recommendations of the Royal Commission we established into aged care. In December of last year, we committed an additional $537 million to immediately respond to the interim report. The government will provide a comprehensive response to the final recommendations following receipt of that report, and this will involve significant additional investment. But we will continue to take action now as promised. For senior Australians who want to keep living at home, tonight the Morrison government announces our largest single increase of 23,000 additional home care packages at a cost of $1.6 billion. This brings the total to more than 180,000 places, 3 times the number of home care packages than when we came to government. 99% of all those seeking an in-home aged care package now have access to some form of in-home support. We're also investing more in this budget to improve skills in the aged care workforce and provide additional dementia training and support. But we know that there is more to be done. Mr. Speaker, there is now $3 trillion in the superannuation accounts of Australians. Too many Australians are paying too much in their superannuation fees. At $30 billion a year, the superannuation fees Australians pay exceeds the costs of their household gas and electricity bills combined. Australians today are paying $450 million a year in unnecessary fees as a result of 6 million multiple accounts. Tonight I announced that new super accounts will no longer be automatically created every time a worker changes jobs. Under our reforms, your super will now follow you. Superannuation funds will be required to meet an annual performance test under the guidance of the Prudential Regulator. Poor performing funds will have nowhere to hide and will be required to notify their members of their underperformance. And to help more Australians make an informed choice about who will manage their retirement savings, the government will also establish an online comparison tool known as Your Super. It will provide Australians with transparent and trusted information about fees and returns. Over the next decade, the reforms announced tonight will reduce waste in the system and save Australian workers $17.9 billion, ensuring your super works better for you. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the coronavirus is a new and invisible enemy. However, other threats to our security have not gone away. Additional funding in this budget will see a total $1.7 billion invested in our cyber security plan to keep Australians safe and secure online. A further $450 million is provided for our law enforcement and intelligence agencies to keep Australians safe from domestic and foreign threats. And we're also providing record funding for the Australian Defence Force as it continues to defend our interests abroad as well as come to our aid here at home. We saw them in action, evacuating families stranded by the fires at Malakuta, disposing of livestock that had fallen victim to flood in Julia Creek, and conducting over 250,000 COVID tests across the country. Our Defence Force is always there for us. In this budget, we are bringing forward $1 billion in planned defence spending to support jobs, as well as extending a range of health and employment programs for our veterans, helping them to transition to civilian life. Mr. Speaker, the global economic environment remains uncertain, with the impact of this crisis to be felt for many years to come. In Australia, the economy is forecast to fall by 3.75% this calendar year and unemployment to peak at 8% in the December quarter. Next calendar year, the economy is forecast to grow by 4.25% and unemployment to fall to 6.5% by the June quarter in 2022. Our economic and fiscal strategy sets out the path to grow our economy, to stabilise the debt and to reduce it over time. It has two phases. First, it focuses on boosting consumer and business confidence, growing the economy and creating jobs. And once the recovery has taken hold and the unemployment rate is on a clear path back to pre-crisis levels, comfortably below 6%, we will move to the second phase, where there is a deliberate shift from providing temporary and targeted support to stabilising gross and net debt as a share of the economy. We will then rebuild our fiscal buffers so that we can be prepared for the next economic shock. More people in jobs means a stronger budget position. Mr. Speaker, This year, Australians' circumstances have changed dramatically, but Australians have not. We are a hard-working, resilient, resourceful and compassionate people. Across this country, people are digging deep, banding together and getting on with it. The road to recovery will be hard, but there is hope. The Morrison government's message to all Australians is that we have your back. And we have a plan to rebuild our economy and create more jobs. Our JobMaker hiring credit will support nearly 500,000 young Australians into work. Our record investment in skills and training will strengthen Australia's workforce. Our manufacturing plan will support the recovery and build our sovereign capability. Tax incentives will unleash a wave of investment across the country. And tax cuts will put more money into the pockets of 11 million hard-working Australians and their families. And we are building the infrastructure we need for the future. We are guaranteeing healthcare and the essential services that Australians rely on. And we are doing this by growing the Australian economy, not increasing taxes. Mr. Speaker, together Australia will come back. Together we will rebuild the economy and secure Australia's future. I commend this bill to the House.
The debate